Okay, used to be in the back of the room. I'm old. Anyways, ready to go? Candidates, here we go. Hello, I am Jane Callahan, a member of the League of Women Voters Rochester. I would like to welcome all of you tonight, the candidates, the audience, and those viewing at a later time, to this forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters Rochester. We'd also like to thank our generous partners of tonight's forum, the Rochester Post-Bulletin, the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Rochester Public Library for their help. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer organization organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we, as a league, do study and take stands on issues, we never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of LWV Rochester or any partner or sponsor of this forum, and the sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. It is our purpose in sponsoring this forum to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss face-to-face issues that are important to you. Tonight's questions have come from LWV Rochester, the Post-Bulletin, the Chamber of Commerce, and members of our audience. You are welcome to submit as many written questions for the candidates as you like. Just hold up the cards as you finish them, and a league volunteer will collect them throughout the forum. If you are watching the live stream, you can email questions to lwvrochester@lwvmn.org. Tonight's volunteers who are managing the questions are also league volunteers. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Given our format, your questions must relate to all candidates. Questions that fall in the same general area or which have been addressed in opening statements may be consolidated to allow the moderator to cover as many topics as possible in the time allotted. We appreciate questions that are forward-looking rather than a review of past issues. If the answer was unclear to you, feel free to submit a follow-up question or to ask the candidate after the forum. Cards become the property of the League of Women Voters Rochester. As there is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time and setting such as this, please feel free to contact the candidate's campaign headquarters directly if your questions are not addressed tonight. We'd like to thank all the candidates who run for public office for offering to serve their community and for the enormous time, dedication, and commitment that running and serving demand. We encourage our members as individuals as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. Welcome to tonight's forum, which features the candidates for 3rd Ward Rochester City Council member. The candidates for this seat are Vanjie Castro, Norman Wall, Savard David Vinji, and Casey McGregor. And now each candidate will have 2 minutes to offer an opening statement. The candidates will then respond in turn to questions provided by LWV Rochester, this evening's partners, and by the audience. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each of those questions. The candidate will then have 2 minutes each to make a closing statement. I would like to suggest to candidates that you make your answer as succinct as possible. It isn't necessary to use the entire minute for your answer, but please finish your sentence when your time is up. We would like to cover as many questions as possible. Each candidate also has 3 30-second rebuttal cards. These can be used at any point after each candidate has answered the question. Only 1 rebuttal card may be used per question. Please put the card in the basket after you have used it. I would like to remind the audience to remain quiet during the forum, hold your applause until the end of the forum, and to turn off all electronic devices. The timekeepers tonight are League of Women Voter Rochester members Jan Strand and Kathy Magerline. Questions will be screened by LWV Rochester members Maggie Brimajoin, Mary Jones, and Kelly Hagar. Representing the Post-Bulletin tonight is Randy Peterson, and Jonathan Krull is here from the Chamber of Commerce. Now, we've done a random drawing to see who goes first, and Candidate Castro will give the first opening statement, followed by candidate McGregor, then candidate Vinci, then candidate Wall. And so now I call on candidate Castro for an opening statement.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, the Post Bulletin, Chamber of Commerce for hosting, and also the Rochester Public Library. And thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Vangie Castro. I'm running for City Council Ward 3. If you don't know where Ward 3 is, it's on the northwest side of Rochester, up around between Valley High Drive and West Circle. It's a fast-growing area with a mix of single-family homes, workforce housing, townhomes, large box stores, and chains, and Northern Hills Golf Course. It's a diverse area with a diverse population with multiple different needs and issues, and I want to represent this area with honesty, transparency, and by being a good steward of our land and finances. I believe that affordability and accessibility and good governance are the foundations to creating a healthy and vibrant community. Too many people in our community are struggling, too many people in our community are struggling to make ends meet, find affordable housing and childcare, or pay for groceries. As a nonprofit worker, I'm on the ground, connected and engaged on local issues. As a human rights commissioner, I see the daily incidents of bias and discrimination hardworking folks face. As president of my golf league, I've engaged in conversations with people who have different life experiences than me. I have the unique ability to see issues from all sides, which makes me well equipped to bring issues to the City Council that truly affects everyday people who live and work here. Too many people are being left out of our political conversation. I'm running to be Ward 3 council member because I believe that every voice matters. If elected, I'll make sure to represent all voters and all voices in Ward 3. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can go to my website at vangiecastro.com. Thank you.
Thank you. The next to speak is candidate McGregor.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching online. I grew up in Wells, Minnesota. I moved to Rochester 20 years ago. I was honored to grow up on a farm in a hardworking small business family. My grandfather started his own trucking business and worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I took on the entrepreneur road as well, and I own a small salon, and I understand that when you own your own business, you really do work 24 hours. The phone doesn't stop ringing, or there's laundry that needs to be done, or a truck needs to be fixed. You constantly have something to do. I graduated from Aveda and eventually opened my own salon and spa. Like many people during the COVID pandemic, I was forced to shut down my business. I'm a story and a voice of all that are still rising from the ashes of the pandemic. It hurt our economy and our small businesses. I want to represent that face and that voice in those service industries, hospitality, cosmetology, restaurants, landscaping, construction, and so many other businesses that were affected by the pandemic and are still having side effects to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is candidate Vinci.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this debate. I appreciate it. I bring experience from having lived in Rochester for roughly 31 years. I started downtown at 17 and have learned a lot about Rochester and how it's changed. I've worked, listened, and learned with residents through my stores, and I also know how the public feels about the changes in the community. Business owners, developers, Mayo Clinic, and workers have all come together in the heart of the city where I'm fortunate and blessed to be. I have begun to build relationships in the city government through work, the RDA board, DMC, city council, and those interconnected with our citizens. The biggest issues I've had is not being fully and properly heard. Our city has strayed from serving its residents and moved too far without citizen involvement politically. We need a balanced approach. We need a balanced, objective team that will stay within the framework the government is designed to function in. I do not want anyone to tell me how to live, when to work, or how they should speak, or how I should speak. I want us to save every dollar that we can, I want a small, efficient government without overreach. I want safer roads, empowering people, and prosperity for those who seek it. Thank you.
Thank you. And last to speak with an opening statement is candidate Wall.
Thank you to those who have organized this forum, and for all of you coming here to listen to ward candidates and bring out the best in the candidates for City Council Ward 3. Outside of 6 years in my life, I have lived all of my life in Minnesota, most of it in southeastern Minnesota. My grade school and high school years were spent coming to the big city of Rochester from small towns surrounding. Little did we know how big Rochester would grow over the next 50 years or so. For the past 26 years, I've lived here in Rochester, more than 24 of them as pastor of Bethel Lutheran Church. Kathy and I have, over those 26 years, used Rochester's amenities as fully as we possibly could. Our son graduated from the public schools here. We have been immersed in park and recreation programs, other sports programs, the arts and theater here in town. We are pleased that one of our adult children settled here in town, and her 3 kids, our 3 grandchildren out of 7, are, again, thoroughly immersed in their public schools here in town. They participate heavily in sports and in neighborhood events. Having less than 2 years ago completed a 41-year career in public service, this is a natural extension of my will to serve people. A nonpartisan role, lifting up the good of the whole. I come well equipped to listen to all sides of an issue, as I have done for 41 years, and with others forging goals that will help us move forward rather than the divisions that seem to plague us. I'm happy to be here today with the other candidates seeking out the best leadership in Rochester.
Thank you. This concludes our opening statements. We will now start with questions for these candidates. They will have 1 minute to answer. We will reverse the order and start with candidate Wall, then Vinge, then McGregor, then Castro. This question is from the League of Women Voters. The question is, what do you believe needs to be prioritized with park and recreation funding?
Thank you. First, I think we need to maintain what we already have in our park and rec program, including trails and buildings and shelters. We need to ensure that park and rec doesn't grow faster than the growth of Rochester. We need to take a look at our outdoor swimming facilities, which haven't changed a great deal over many decades. So many of the young families in Ward 3 are asking for an aquatic center. I think that we have a great deal of park land across the entire city, including good land in Ward 3, where we can build amenities so that they're not concentrated downtown, say at a Soldiers Field, but that the whole city can have a chance to enjoy some of the park and rec programs.
Thank you. The next to speak is candidate Vinge.
Thank you. I'm in agreement. Park and rec needs to be improved. Going door to door, it's one of the most heard things from the residents of Ward 3. That includes our golf courses, our smaller parks, Silver Lake, and Soldiers Field. There's been a lot of discussion about changes that will potentially happen. Our aquatic center, in comparison to smaller surrounding areas, needs to be completely redone. Other cities that are our size have aquatic centers that 3 or 4 times the size of ours. There needs to be some accountability specifically from Park and Rec, so I believe City Council needs to step in and ask the hard questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next to speak is candidate McGregor.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I certainly can, even though I threw it on the ground. Pardon. What do you believe needs to be prioritized with park and recreation funding?
Well, the mayor has the control over who is appointed to the board of Park and Rec. And so I think it comes from the mayor down to the city council in this one. So I would love to see another aquatic center added to Rochester. If you have been up in the Ward 3 area, we don't have any water feature up there. We don't have a lake, we don't have a pond. We are like a dry ward. And so it would be really great to get a water feature up there. One thing I've heard going door to door is, why are there so many banks? And I think it's because there's nothing else to focus on. There's just nothing else to focus on. So that's what everybody's drawing attention to. And so we need something there that brings fun and vibrancy in Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Castro.
So if we're talking about wanting to maintain our current budget where we're at, parks facility maintenance should be our priority. We have 120 parks and 85 miles of trail system, so we need to continue to make sure that we have a high-quality parks system. And if we want to talk about like what are some priorities, we spend a lot of time indoors, so maybe considering an indoor park, that's something that a lot of people have talked about. I know that there's a discussion about pools and golf courses, but at this point, we have to kind of think about a lot of people don't do winter sports and what can we do indoors, and especially folks who don't have mobility and older people. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be from the Rochester Post-Bulletin, Randy Peterson. To speak first, McGregor, second Castro, Wall third, and Vinge fourth.
The required state approval to extend Rochester's 0.5% sales tax hasn't been received, which means a vote on the issue is unlikely this year. With the current sales tax set to end in 2024, would you support a potential second effort to extend this tax to pay for the defined public projects, which include street reconstruction, affordable housing, flood control and water quality, and the creation of a regional community and recreational complex?
I am a no, and this is why. Because I don't think we need to keep adding tax. We need to find other ways and other solutions through tough problems. We have to, in a way, reimagine how we're spending money. We have to imagine what are missed opportunities. Where could we have added a way to capitalize on an event? Like having Rochester swag down by the music on the, you know what I'm saying? Yes, Riverside, thank you. And having sweatshirts that say Rochester, and you could have a different groups making artwork, and you could have a little stand selling stuff, and it could go for a different thing. I think there's just different ways to bring in some capitalizing things through volunteering and through different ways of looking.
Thank you. Next to speak is candidate Castro.
I think it's hard for people to think about raising taxes in 2024 right now, since we're really concerned with high gas prices and inflation. But I understand why we didn't vote on it, because we wanted to maintain our current budget where it's at. We are a growing city. From our last census, we're at 120,000. Before that, we were at 100,000. So we continue to grow. We're projected to grow to about 160,000 in 2040. So we need to maintain the strategic plan for the city to continue to grow and be a city of innovation. So it will have to be something that we kind of revisit, probably in 2023. We're on a 2-year budget cycle. And currently we're on our supplemental year. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak, candidate Wall.
I am a yes on this for 3 reasons. We already have the half cent in place, so it would not feel like a tax increase. but instead paying what we have paid for a long time. The second is the most important reason. There are tens of thousands of people who come from the region and from farther away than that to Rochester every day, and they purchase products. They also use the amenities that Rochester provides for them. They use our roads. They use our parking ramps. They use big ticket items like the Civic Center. So by them paying a sales tax, they help pay for the amenities that they are using. And my third reason is that, as Randy has mentioned, this sales tax has done great things for us with projects, and it will continue to do so in 2024 and beyond.
Thank you. And last to speak, candidate Vinji.
Thank you. So I am partially for it and partially against it. I agree with Mr. Wall that we certainly need to ensure that the money that is collected from that tax from our visitors is paid, shifted towards the needs of our community. The part that is no is that I do feel that there's a huge opportunity within Rochester for fundraising within a partnership between not only our citizens but our businesses and as well as our government. I know that recently Hy-Vee had stepped up to the plate and assisted with the opening of the Silver Lake Pool. Now I think that partnerships between business and government has been really lacking, and we have a tremendous economy, and our businesses are constantly supporting, constantly donating to all kinds of nonprofits. I've recommended that we take that focus and shift it towards bigger items, and this certainly could be something that the city government could look at, and I agree with. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to remind the candidates that if you have a rebuttal, just hold it up. I won't be asking you after every question if there is a rebuttal, because I think you've already told me you're a pretty good group about that. So the next question comes from Chamber of Commerce, Jonathan Kroll, and it will go initially to candidate Vinji, then Wall, then McGregor, and then Castro.
As Rochester continues to grow, communication is essential to inform not only residents, but area businesses and organizations of developments in infrastructure, changes in policy, and more. How can the City Council improve communication with businesses and organizations in the community?
Candidate Vinji.
Can you repeat that one more time? That's a long question.
As Rochester continues to grow, communication is essential to inform not only residents, but area businesses and organizations of developments in infrastructure, changes in policy, and more. How can the City Council improve communication with businesses and organizations in the community?
Specifically with the City Council, I don't think that's really their responsibility. Being able to represent the citizens of Ward 3 is specifically what we represent. I'm on the Rochester Downtown Alliance board, and the Rochester Downtown Alliance, one of their major goals right now is to interact with the businesses in the SSDI district, which has recently just been expanded. That is really a job for the RDA. I do feel that it could be expanded for a larger part throughout the city. It is a focus. So the RDA is really the tool to use that and accomplish that. Thank you.
Next to speak, candidate Wall.
As I visit with people at their doors these last 6 weeks, I often hear frustration from people, and they wonder about the city government. Well, the fact is, the city government does some really good work. I'm really proud of the talented staff that works for city government. And if the populace actually knew what they did, I think they would be a lot happier. So there's some disconnect there. I'm sure there's the same disconnect between city and business to a degree. We have an Office of Communications at the city. I think we simply need to communicate. I've heard it said that people need to hear something 7 times before they remember. So we need to find redundant ways to continue to tell the story of the city so that we can be in better partnership with one another, city business, city and citizen.
Thank you. The next to speak, candidate McGregor.
I do agree that this is not really a city council issue. And I think right now, in the day of technology, we are having a hard time with communication. Somebody's on one form of app, the other person's on another app, and right now, like running my business, I have to check 3 different emails through 2 different Facebooks, then I get phone calls, then I get text messages. It is exhausting to keep up with all the forms of technology that everybody is currently using right now. And that is what we need to figure and work on and harness is how do you Instagram, do you Facebook, do you Snapchat, do you email? I mean, that's what we have to learn as a whole is how to harness the social media because there's so many apps.
Thank you. Finally, candidate Castro.
So I'm going to agree with Norman about there's a disconnect with communication, but I'll give a specific example of road closures. So folks don't know there's going to be roads closed for all of summer. So social media, sure, they might post things. You have to post it several times, but it is important, and it is the city's responsibility to communicate with the residents of Rochester. It is our job to provide high-quality customer service, and that means communicating with the residents and letting them know what's going on. But it goes both ways because you can actually sign up to get a bulletin, weekly bulletin from the city council, but there's also an option of doing text message alerts. I don't know if that's something that the city is looking into, but we used to post things in the post bulletin, but people don't read the post bulletin anymore, and we're not posting anything in the post bulletin. Not saying there's anything wrong with the post bulletin. I mean, they read it. It's digital. It's not, So we do have to find various different ways to communicate with different people. Thank you.
Thank you, and I understand we have a rebuttal. 30 seconds.
So I wanted to speak specifically about the city council during COVID. They did not do a great job during COVID with interacting. In August of 2021, I sent a recommendation letter to have open discussion about a revitalization program downtown because of what was happening with Mayo. I got no response for nearly 6 months until finally RDA met with me and started to design the program for retail development. So I really feel that there was an absence during COVID with their communication with businesses.
Thank you. Any further rebuttals? Just so I don't miss them. If I start going forward, just tell me there was one. Now, question number 4 comes from the audience, and let's see what's on their mind. And this question goes first to Castro, then McGregor, then Wall, then Vinge. It's on green energy. What actions would you take to promote sustainable green energy use in Rochester, and how?
So one of my ideas was turning the fleet into electric cars. Also, a lot of the buildings that the city owns, we could probably save a lot of energy, and I think they're probably working on this. They do actually have a person that focuses on green energy within the city about changing light bulbs or creating timers. But I know that RPU has been looking into green energy, so if it's solar, wind, but yeah, those are the different solutions that we could look into. And electric buses too. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McGregor.
Green energy is a very hot topic right now, and I'm not exactly sure which part of green energy I like and which part of green energy I don't like. I think it comes with a cost. So if I get an electric car, do I now plug the car into my house, and then my house pays for the gas versus the gas station? I don't understand how that changes and how that actually works. I haven't read good data on the windmills. They don't last long enough to produce the wind that they need for what they cost. So I have done a lot of reading on this subject. How do we recycle the material? Where does it end up? Where does the material come from? Is the material in the devices recyclable? I guess I end up with a lot of questions at the end of the day, still with the whole green energy movement.
Candidate Vinge. No, excuse me, candidate Wall is third. Pardon me.
Thank you. On a macro scale, it is Rochester Public Utilities who will make the biggest difference in considering green energy for our city. And obviously, the City Council does not have sway over that council, over the RPU other than budget. But getting down to a smaller level, that is the things that we can do as individuals, I think it would be good for the city to host events that would teach people about green energy, things they can do in their own homes, things that will assist in helping to reduce carbon footprints. Thankfully, the cost of green energy is coming down, whether it's batteries for electric cars, whether it's solar panels for homes. If people knew more about it and were better informed, it's possible that we could make at least a little dent. RPU could make a very big dent.
Thank you. Candidate Vinge.
So if you're talking about specifically a net zero by 2025, I've heard that in recent discussion. The question is, how do you have the maximization of bringing in solar, bringing in efficient cars, encouraging people to use bikes and other things like that without negatively affecting how your economy and how people work, live, and get around in Minnesota. We live in a state that is 6 months out of the year very difficult to travel, both with bicycle, walking, and even with electric vehicles. Now, as those things become more efficient, it will be easier and easier for that to happen. I definitely feel that solar panels and incentivization by the city to encourage people to do that is very, very important. We're headed that direction. The question is how can we do it and maximize everyone's chance of being able to do it financially?
Thank you. And I believe we have a rebuttal from McGregor.
I think one part of green energy that we forget about is planting trees. Trees are one of our biggest things. They help with the carbon. They produce oxygen for us. Growing up where I grew up on a farm, we planted a lot of trees. That was one of my parents' big passion. I think they planted 50 more trees this year. It's just something we've always done, is planted a lot of trees. And I think trees are such a great thing for our society and for humans that I think we should really plant more trees.
Thank you. And the next question will be one from the floor, but from the audience, and League also has a question on this. I'm going to use the League version. It goes to candidate Vinge first, then candidate Wall, then Castro, and then McGregor. And the question is, what do you see as the pluses and minuses of the Unified Development Code, the UDC, the city's zoning ordinance currently being developed?
Now, I've met with Allison Zelms and had an extensive discussion about this. The UDC has both positive and negatives. The positives are it will streamline the policy for getting developments through the system. Unfortunately, it bypasses the city council for a lot of the beginning stages of those developments. It also has a co-design, which is not recorded, and we don't know how it's chosen. I think that specifically needs to be identified within what the UDC is doing. The Rochester Area Builders does support it, and as far as I know I need to meet with Ryan, I don't know what his last name is, and learn quite a bit more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wall.
We already have development codes and regulations, to be sure. About 20 years ago, I was part of a $7.5 million building project, and we needed to negotiate a maze of codes, which sometimes had us scratching our heads, which we made mistakes and needed to go to the council for variances in order to be able to fulfill the contracts that we had with the folks who were building. The unified code seems like a great deal to me, since it streamlines the process and makes it less onerous for architects and builders to follow. So it seems an entirely good thing to me.
Candidate Castro.
I think this is something that the City Council has really been discussing for a few years, about trying to make the development process more streamlined. It is, as Vinji said, that it's supported by the Builders Association, and I think it's a good idea to try to find ways to make development easier for folks who are trying to invest in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McGregor.
I think there's pluses and minuses with the UDC. It allows us to build small homes on small lots, which I think is great for our community. I would love to see some like slab home, retirement home, like where it's all set up. You can retire, and if you need a knee or a hip, your house is set up for you. And so I think there could be great opportunity with that. Now, that being said, I don't feel like I want somebody to come into my neighborhood, buy 2 houses, 3 houses, and put up a 4-plex or a 6-plex in my neighborhood. So I think there is caution with this code, with different things that they could do by modifying it.
Thank you. The next question is also from the audience, and it will go first to McGregor, then Castro, then Vinji, and then Wall. It's on an inclusive community. How can you, as a city council member, promote Rochester as an inclusive community for all?
I embrace policies of the city of Rochester that create a culture of equality and diversity so all Rochester citizens and visitors can thrive in our community. I think the downtown area, I would love to see the businesses come back, the nightlife come back. I think we've lost a lot with COVID. I was talking to a younger generation, and we have very little nightlife left. And somebody said, are we in Footloose right now? Like, there's nowhere we can go dance. So I do think that the downtown area is missing something. And so I think there's more to this.
Thank you. The next to answer is Candidate Castro.
How do we create a more inclusive community? That's the question, right?
Correct.
As me as a candidate. So I worked at the Diversity Council for 6.5 years, working with lots of individuals and organizations trying to create a welcoming and inclusive community. So I'm a professional at it. I have lived experience as a person with intersected identities, so I know how to speak to different groups and individuals. I have continued to work at a nonprofit that works directly with organizations that provide services to the most marginalized groups of folks. And I try to stay involved and in my community in various different ways by sitting on boards and being in social groups because I love the city, I love the people in it, and I want to continue to be part of it and do well by the people that live here. Thank you.
Next to speak, Candidate Vinji.
Thank you. As one of the members on the board of the RDA, we have one committee which is called the ACE Cultural Committee. And we give donations to cultural events that encourage inclusivity in Rochester. The most important thing is education. You've got to educate people on the differences of who people are. When I was 17, I was blessed to meet a gentleman from Doha, and I learned Arabic at 17 years old. And it's helped me tremendously. I have people that will come by and say, look, there's the guy that speaks Arabic if they're from the Middle East. And it's quite funny, and it's kind of like, bark like a dog, or speak Arabic. That's not that funny, but I've also had a chance to learn about other cultures and learn Spanish and learn some Italian and learn some French. And so the real thing about inclusivity is you've got to learn about a culture, and Rochester should encourage a growing cultural sharing, because that's how you come together. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wall.
The first thing seems to be the most obvious, and that is to recognize that every person has value and is unique, that we need to value each person who comes into our lives. It boggles my mind that we wouldn't just automatically be kind to our neighbor, kind to the next person that we meet on the street or in the store. Our previous mayor, Ardell Brady, with whom I've worked for a long time, was big on a couple of things. One was to be inclusive of everyone, and you have seen signs around town that popped up, I don't know, 10 years ago now, about being an inclusive community, welcoming all. Ardell Brady was instrumental in that. He also talked about civility, that we have lost a great deal of civility in this culture. If we were to simply pledge to one another to be kind and welcome all, I think that would make a huge difference in the way we receive people.
Thank you. Yes, rebuttal. Thank you. Candidate Castro.
I do agree with Norman says that it's important for us to value human differences, but I think we also have to acknowledge that there is divisiveness and that there is discrimination that is happening around us, and we can't solve a problem if we don't face it first. And so until we all feel like we belong here in Rochester, then we're not going to be an inclusive community. And that's about having hard conversations. Until we, as a community, start having really difficult conversations and admitting there is probably groups of people that don't feel included, then we can start moving towards a sense of inclusivity and belonging. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further rebuttals? No. So we're going to go to another question from the floor. Candidate Wall first, then Vinge, then Castro, then McGregor, and then Castro. And the question is on public transportation. What can the City Council do to increase public transportation options to decrease the vehicle traffic here?
Well, the City Council is currently working on efforts such as that with circulators and Blink program, encouraging parking and park and ride from various places, even working with 125 Live for a new parking ramp. Excuse me, what was the last part of that question?
Let me restate it. What can the City Council do to increase public transportation options to decrease the vehicle traffic here?
Obviously, to make it affordable would be one as well. But clearly, it's going to be up to people. People will decide how they want to get from one place to another. We are a culture that is simply enslaved to our cars for the most part. It will take a huge culture shift in order to make that happen.
Thank you. Next to speak is candidate Vinge.
Thank you. So the largest capital improvement project is the bus rapid transit. That's $18.7 million. The city is doing pretty much as they can, from what I can tell, and a little bit too much. Now, vehicles are something that all of us are currently using. The question is if you put too much of a siphon on traffic, how does it affect our community? How does it affect our downtown? If You look at the vacancies, the number one complaint I have is about the difficulty of traveling downtown or getting downtown. So we definitely need to have a corresponding effect between the growth of Rochester and the slowing of the increase of traffic. I don't feel that eliminating cars is an option. And the question is what negative effects. You have to always look at the negative effects of something you're trying to implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McGregor.
Living up in Ward 3, getting down to downtown is not the funnest thing to do, because you have to hit all the stoplights and then you have to find somewhere to park. So I think, how do we get that community downtown? I'm not exactly sure what the right answer is. It's a long scooter ride, it's a long bike ride, and if I get downtown and then I want to go home, do I have to wait? How long do I have to wait? And so I don't know if you can really take cars out of the equation. I feel like there always has to be something for parking coming from the outskirts.
Thank you. Candidate Castro. Do you want to hear the?
Well, I didn't know if Benji wanted to do a rebuttal or. Okay. So currently, NPR had an article about on-demand transportation. So it would be more cost-effective. We are in Ward 3, which is further out in Northwest. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to go downtown. DMC and the heart of the city has really focused on folks living downtown, and they are planning on having less parking. So the idea of needing public transportation is going to be a major concern for the city council. So circulators, like Norman said, providing different options like on-demand public transportation. And I think currently the city council is looking on their strategic plan for transportation. So that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a rebuttal from candidate Vinji.
Thank you. My wife had a chance to speak with one of her friends today who lives behind Hy-Vee, and she has really had a difficult time finding the bus stops. Visibility and education are really the two key components. We actually have a great transit system, and it has a net positive from a fiscal standpoint. So I really feel we have to add that in there. We have to say we really need to increase the visibility of and the education of what is offered within Rochester. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the next question, which will go first to candidate Castro, then McGregor, then Wall, and then Vinji. And the question is, from the League of Women Voters, how would you seek advice from a broad range of your constituents and work with other public bodies?
So currently there is a tri-governmental group with Rochester Public Schools, Olmsted County Commissioners, and also the City Council, and they meet to discuss the different issues and policies that concern all three government bodies, and so that's an option. There's also, I think we sent out surveys to the community to ask different questions. Like, I think currently there's the Aquatic Center. They have sent out a survey that way to get more feedback. There's various different ways that the City Council has been trying to get community involvement and community engagement, but the best way, I guess, is to just go out into the community and ask. Ask, what are your concerns? How does this issue affect you on a day-to-day basis? And that's about us, going out into the community and talking to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McGregor.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How would you seek advice from a broad range of your constituents and work with other public bodies?
I think communication is key. Having communication between the city and the county commissioners, having communication between all the different entities in government. I think seeking advice from the commissioners, if there's a road project going on in the county that's going to hit city limits, is a key thing to be knowledgeable on and be working with the county commissioners. There is a road project, I'm sure most of you have heard that they're closing the interchanges on Highway 14, which is going to impact West Circle Drive. So that is coming up here. I think MnDOT posted they're closing them on the 25th of July. So that is right around the corner for West Circle Drive, and 19th Street will also feel some of that burden, and that is in Ward 3.
Thank you. Candidate Wall.
It will be my great joy to establish listening sessions with people from Ward 3. I enjoy getting together with groups of people. This size is a great size of a crowd. To have coffees with people, to listen to them one-on-one or 1-on-30. There's no substitute for face-to-face meetings, for coming to understand the other, even if we would disagree on an issue. I think we need to invite each other into the other's presence, whether that's the county commissioners or whether it's some kind of state commission that we need to see face to face so that we can learn from one another. I would love to establish some kind of blog, or I don't know if we have access to text or email people from a specific ward, but would love to communicate frequently with the people in the ward so they know what's happening and so that they have the ability to contact me as well. And I would love to be able to respond to those people of the ward.
We have come to our 9th question, and it will go first to McGregor, then Vinge. I'm sorry. Oh, is there a rebuttal? I didn't call on you. This is why we need to have these guys here. Candidate Vinge. Yeah, I don't know why I hit that.
It's okay. Thank you. Can you repeat the question? Too much laughing.
Yes. The question was, can you remind me, audience?
How they communicate with various types.
Okay, yes, that was from the League of Women Voters.
Thank you.
How would you seek advice from a broad range of your constituents and work with other public bodies?
Put the time in. That's the most important thing. I had a meeting with Nick Campion a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to understand from somebody who's a smart guy, may not see eye to eye all the time, but I wanted to know how much time you invest. I want to know how to figure out to do the job. And he said, pick a lane and put the time in. And so that's what's really important. Now, the other thing is there is a 311 program that's being developed for the public to use. So potentially that will help the public interact with the city as an entirety. So I think that's something that us as council members need to talk to people and figure out how to take those questions and come up with a data program to design that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? No. And we have come to the final question, and this is from the audience. And so I think it'll end us on a happy note. McGregor first, then Vinge, then Wall, and then Castro. Breweries in Rochester are mostly located in the northwest quadrant. Is there anything the city council can or should do to encourage breweries to locate in the other 3 quadrants?
Well, I do like a good brewery. That is based on small business and where the small business has the opportunity to open a business. So that goes down finding the person that wants to own a brewery and where could they set one up in your ward. And it goes down to small business ownership, and it goes back to, can they get their liquor license from the city? There's few things that go into play with it, but that is small business ownership, and that is encouraging your friend to open a brewery.
Thank you. Second to speak, candidate Vinji.
Thank you. The competitor that I have, Tim Berg, nice gentleman, we have a great friendly relationship. And when there was talk of Men's Warehouse coming to downtown, I went to Tim and I said, are you worried about this? And Tim said to me, when you go to a fair, you know why there's 6 hot dog stands all in a row? And I said, no. And the answer is because they sell 10 times as many hot dogs. So some competition can be a really good thing. It can also be a net draw for the people you want to serve. So the more the merrier, and if there's others elsewhere, that's good too. So thank you.
And third to speak, candidate Wall.
No.
That was succinct.
You know, about as successfully as we may encourage Quick Trip to build more gas stations and other oh, wait a minute, they already do. No.
Thank you. And finally, candidate Castro.
Well, I love me a good microbrewery. I think this has a lot to do with planning and zoning, and there was in place an ordinance that limits the amount of alcohol licenses. It's also about cost and where you can build a microbrewery or a brewery. And I would imagine Northwest was more cost effective. It's more expensive to build downtown and probably other parts of Rochester. But I think it's great to have more breweries in Northwest because that's what we're representing. And we need more places for folks to gather. Some people would probably like places that are non-alcoholic, but the majority of folks that live in Rochester is becoming younger. It's like average age is 38. So they need things to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a rebuttal from candidate Vinji.
You beat me to the non-alcoholic part. The thing we want to really talk about, and I hear about this downtown and in Ward, this came up obviously with Ward 3, but we need other businesses besides bars and restaurants. We need entertainment. We need new manufacturing. We need to bring in new forms of family-friendly entertainment. Rochester has got a pretty poor rap when it comes to what we offer. So I think that's an even more important question to ask.
Thank you. Any further rebuttals? We now come to the closing statements, 2 minutes per person. We'll reverse the order of the introductory statements. So candidate Wall, then Vinji, then McGregor, and then Castro. Candidate Wall.
Thank you for your interest in this candidate forum, whether you are here in person tonight or whether you are watching this later over the web. Those who are entrusted with leading Rochester have been given a huge vote of trust by the community. It is no small task to lead a community of the first class like this. I have served in positions of trust for more than 41 years. It has been my great joy to help lead people through challenges in life, to celebrate our successes together. I've had the task of listening to all kinds of positions on every issue, and even if we disagree with one another on an issue, that we forge together with goals that we can support and move ahead. I have served on local, regional, and national boards. I have served 6 years on a school board in South Central Minnesota. I've been a board of regent on the Augsburg University board for 12 years. Their main campus is in Minneapolis. A secondary campus is here in Rochester. As one who is semi-retired, I can offer the time needed to do this job. I have the time to meet with constituents on a daily basis if necessary. I can carve out time to meet with city professionals. I can take time so that we craft the best responses possible. City council membership would be my first priority. One of my greatest joys has always been to help people overcome their obstacles and achieve their goals. It would be just a wonderful time to be able to join together with the city council members and with talented city staff to make Rochester the very best place it can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Vinge.
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for putting this on. It's been a pleasure to speak with everybody, and thank you, fellow candidates. No, this is the first chance and opportunity I've had to run for any kind of city, any kind of office, and I was very nervous about doing it. And I had someone come to me multiple times, and I really felt that I didn't want to. And I talked to multiple people, and they all said, you know, you have a strong voice. You've always stood up for this. You were involved with this, and you've always been honest. And I finally got to the point where I realized that I couldn't come up with a reason not to do it. And I'm at the right age. I have 5 children. They're all grown. My wife retired from Mayo Clinic. So it was really, this is the logical thing for me to do. I've done really well in my businesses. I'm ready to step away from my businesses and have somebody else run them and take on a new opportunity to really master an area. And I love people. There's no greater thing to stand up for what people believe in. And I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McGregor.
So all day long, I talk to clients, and they get to share what's going on in their lives, what's happening at work, what's happening around their dinner table. I was recently talking to a client just the other day, and she said, you know, right now they are feeling the pinch. She's like, this is my first time that we're telling our kids, no, we have to be more restrictive in our budget. And I think we have to be really careful on how we move forward. I think we have to be protective of the budget right now in today's economy. And so hearing stories all day long and talking all day long, I get a good sense of what's going on in the community. I want to be a part of building a strong business community in Rochester and being a voice for Ward 3 and small business owners to help small business owners to be a catalyst for growth and healthy commerce, being a good steward of our resources to invest in our infrastructure and ensuring our roads, bridges, bike paths, wastewater treatment, refuse management, park and rec department, and city services working to meet our goals together. Building relationships with our county commissioners, police officers, fire department, IDS 535, MnDOT, and so many other city services to ensure we are utilizing the best and the brightest to make Rochester the best it can be is my goal. I will bring a different perspective to City Council, and I want to be the next voice for Ward 3.
Thank you. And Candidate Castro.
Thanks again, everyone, for being here. So I went to college for political science and public administration, and I dreamed and hoped to work in government. I worked full-time when I went to junior college and worked part-time while doing an internship my last year of university. I'm an immigrant. I did the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing. I worked for all the stuff and things that we were told we wanted, which means I understand the difficulty of being successful in a world that values productivity and output, especially when you struggle with mental health issues. The last years have been difficult on all of us. The last few years, individuals, families, and small businesses alike. We went through it together. It's important we have leaders who see us and hear us. Political candidates and elected officials should reflect all of us, our community, real people who are figuring out where our place is in the political process. That good, reasonable, honest, And kind people can and should be elected officials. We should be able to run for office, and our economic status, job titles, or our lack of connections to business and builders shouldn't keep us from being at the decision-making table. Nonprofit workers like myself are perfectly adept at running government because we are good stewards of public funds and we serve everyone, especially the marginalized and most underserved. We know when we serve the least of us, we all do better. As a person of color who is queer, I am just like you. I'm your friend, neighbor, coworker, and the person who's served in this community for over 12 years because that's who I am. You can vote for me or you don't have to. I hope you do, but at the end of the day, choose a person who believes in you and who will believe in themselves to do right by you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a closing rebuttal from candidate Vinji. It's 30 seconds.
Okay, that's good. Just making sure. Thank you. I just wanted to add one more thing. As the four of us are out talking to people within our ward, I want to really encourage the people in our ward. You have an opportunity to communicate with people that are connected right now with the Rochester government. We see these people, we're learning about what the job is going to do and what it's going to be. So email us your questions. I've talked to probably 70 people and I've gotten one email. So engage us, give us the opportunity to communicate on your behalf. The best thing we can do is represent.
And one more rebuttal from candidate Castro.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that it's been really pleasant to actually campaign with these three other folks. We've all been really, cordial and civil towards each other and getting to know each other. And we've seen some really interesting forums, and I'm really glad to be able to be here tonight with these three folks. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we must really thank you, as we want to say that each of the candidates, we thank you for participating in tonight's forum. Thank you for your service to the community and for your willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for office. I would like to remind everyone that the views expressed in the forum tonight were those of the candidates, not those of LWV Rochester or any partner or sponsor of the forum. Thank you, audience, for coming tonight. Thank you to our partners, the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce, the Rochester Post-Bulletin, and the Rochester Public Library. Remember that primary election day is August 9th, and that early voting has started. If you have voted by absentee ballot and would like to change your ballot based on what you learned tonight, visit minvotes.org for more information on the process. Please remember to vote. If you have a question about your polling place, would like to see your sample ballot, or learn more about the candidates, visit vote411.org. To see this forum again, access the forums from LWV Rochester or the Rochester Public Library website. Good night, and now you can applaud.